Ric Grenell, our Senior Advisor for Foreign Policy and National Security, is joining us now. And Rick, you tweeted out this morning, 8 of the 31 NATO countries currently pay their obligations, 2% of their GDP military spending into NATO. Germany and Canada are 2 of the wealthier nations not paying their agreed-upon percentage. Yet President Joe Biden failed to press NATO this week, but then called up American reserves to active duty. That's the key line we wanted to talk to you about today. People are kind of scratching their heads. The number is somewhere around 3,000 U.S. reservists who have now been, as you said, called up to active duty in Europe with, I guess we haven't seen a lot of explanation for what they are going to do.
Yeah, and I don't think you'll get much because the administration doesn't really know. They're scrambling. There's no strategy. I would point people to President Trump's statement this morning. Wow, was it a good one? It really nails Joe Biden because it goes back and it shows that President Biden has said that the United States is running out of ammo, a certain type of ammo that's needed in Ukraine, and the Ukrainians need it. And so when you combine the fact that the United States is running out of some artillery, and we're clearly at the point where our men and women are exhausted or tired or stretched, whatever word you want to use. The Pentagon has asked for reserves to be called up to active duty. Now, I know that's only 3,000, but this is just the beginning. And so when you look at what President Trump is saying, I think he's got a great point, which is we're depleting our artillery. We're depleting the men and women of the armed forces. At least they're stretched thin enough to where we got to call up reinforcements. This is a signal that we're marching towards war. There's no peace plan. And all of Washington, D.C. seems to be stuck on the fact that we are just going to war and more war. What is it that the American government is so trapped? You know, we did Iraq and Afghanistan. We just ended Afghanistan. And so now we got to create another perpetual war. The war machine, I think, is very large, very popular, and very powerful. And we need to be able to recognize that peace is way more popular.
I'm all for replenishing those weapons that we need to make sure we have an adequate enough weapons that if there was a major conflict, we have enough weapons to sustain ourselves, for ourselves, especially taking care of America first, and that our troops have those weapons. I think American taxpayers are happy to pay for that. They may not be happy. The reason why they're so depleted is because we sent them off to Ukraine without a process in place already to make sure that we were restockpiling our weapons here in the United States. I wanted to play this. I'm going to play this for you again because it's such a head scratcher, and I want to get your direct thoughts on it because President Biden made a big statement in Finland today, and I mean, I don't know if it's a gaffe or if it's gaslighting. It's one of the two. Let's play it again, folks.
No one can join NATO while a war is going on, where a NATO nation is being attacked, because that guarantees that we're in a war. And we're in a third world war. So that it's not about whether or not they should or shouldn't join. It's about when they can join, and they will join NATO. The issue of whether or not this is going to keep Putin from continuing to fight, the answer is Putin's already lost the war.
Okay, right there, Rick. If the war is done in Ukraine, then we don't need the reservist, and I guess we could allow Ukraine to join NATO because there wouldn't be a third world war. It just seems like total gaslighting. We're sending over resources to the point where we're depleted.
Yeah, look, we haven't even touched yet on the billions and billions of dollars that the American taxpayer has been given for protecting Ukrainian borders, but not American borders. I think that's a real troublesome strategy. And also, look, you started this segment by reading my tweet, which I care very deeply about NATO and NATO funding. And 8 out of the 31 countries are paying their NATO obligations. In 2014, in Wales at the NATO meeting that's called the Wales Pledge, NATO members gave themselves 10 years from 2014 to 2024 to get their act together and spend 2% of their GDP on military issues and readiness for NATO.
Yeah, I want to go to the phones. Let's go to Jeffrey in Indiana on line one. Hey, Jeffrey.
Thank you for taking my call. I heard on social media Donald Trump says he can end that war in one day. I don't see how that's possible.
I mean, I want to, this again, I know that this statement, Rick, I think you could probably explain it best. I actually do understand, I think, what President Trump's saying, because one day as president, but there's also a transition period of months where the country at war like a Russia knows you're coming in.
Like Reagan.
Right. They know you're coming, and they know you're coming with a very different strategy, and they know you're coming with kind of this no BS strategy. So with that, I think it's one day maybe as president, but you do have this period of time during a transition to tell the world and tell the Russians exactly what's going to happen if you continue this when I take the oath of office.
Yeah, look, I think Donald Trump could solve this in one day, because there's a difference between a threat of military action and a credible threat of military action. And one of the things about Donald Trump is that he's unpredictable, and leaders know he's unpredictable, and they respect that. I can't answer this question without showing the fact that Donald Trump had sanctions on Putin's Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Joe Biden came in and dropped those sanctions on Putin's pipeline and signaled weakness. Putin saw Joe Biden's disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. All of these issues point to credibility. And what Donald Trump has is the ability to sit in that room, and when he says something, they know it's absolutely the truth. And so he can solve this in 24 hours because he would go directly to both sides and speak to them directly. We've got a problem in Washington that people think talking directly to an opponent or an enemy or somebody is somehow a reward. Talking is a tactic to get to your goal, and we should never be afraid of talking.
I mean, I think that is one of the biggest issues here. Is we spent this, we've been monitoring this with you, Rick, throughout this week. The trip to NATO, the statements made, the kind of the way the president looked, and I guess even the perception of President Biden. Reading from the note cards and kind of not having this full grasp, then making these broad statements like the war in Ukraine is over, and admitting on national television that we don't have the ammunitions that we need and we're depleted both at home and so we don't even have and that was a justification for cluster bombs. It is really frustrating to people that every time these nations come together, they never even try to come up with a plan or an idea or way to where this ends. How does this actually come to an end? You can't just say the Russians have already lost the war. Ask a Ukrainian right now if that's true while their town or city is getting bombed. Ask a Russian military member if that's true while he's getting shot at by Ukrainians with U.S. weapons. So it's not true. But even if it was aspirational, it would be nice to have an aspirational goal to get this done.
Look, stale Washington, D.C. diplomacy is about delivering talking points, delivering lines, not listening. They don't have the ability to do real-time negotiations. President Biden skipped the dinner with NATO members because he can't have an interaction. He can only read cue cards. You and I, Jordan, talk a lot about Turkey and Erdogan. And that meeting between Joe Biden and President Erdogan was embarrassing. Joe Biden had talking points. He kept glancing down at his lap, reading talking points. Erdogan is sitting there saying, why can't we have a real-time conversation about the war, about peace, about Putin? And Joe Biden doesn't have the ability, the cognitive ability to interact, which is why he's scripted on everything. It's a one-way street.
That's why when I think Rick, when he said that the war in Ukraine is over, that is a scripted moment. That's a teleprompter moment. And so it's not a gaffe. It's gaslighting to the American people because it's just not true. We're sending all these weapons over. We're calling up reservists. We're uprooting American reservists, those men and women who proudly serve our country, to go to, because it seems like our troops are too thin also around the world. Rick, as always, we appreciate you being part of the ACLJ team and all of your analysis as well.